entry in Daniel in chapter 6. So if you'd like to turn to that chapter of that book, it will be Daniel chapter 6 suffers from some of the same problems that we have culturally with the rest of the book of Daniel. It tends to get turned into the feltboard, cartoon, storybook version of the story instead of what the Bible is actually about. We hear about Daniel in the lion's den, and you might immediately think of a book that you were read as a child, or one that you maybe read to a child on a regular basis. And the illustrations you see there, maybe Daniel has a beard, he's an older man at this point, been around for a while, and he's a high-ranking official in the government. And so he's probably wearing nice clothes, and the men who are plotting against him probably have dark looks on their faces and are drawn quite sinister as they go around plotting against him. Some of those things are not totally out of the realm of possibility or even exactly correct with what we read in the biblical narrative. But if all we have is that particular version in our heads, we might have a hard time learning what the adult, grown-up Bible lesson is from this story. It's a lot more than God sending an angel to shut the mouths of some predators. There is a reason why this story is famous. I'm just not sure it's the reason we should have in our minds. Let's start at the beginning of this chapter. Daniel chapter 6 starts with the reign of Darius, the king, you might say. He's the current administrator of this empire. Some people would refer to him by other titles, but for all intents and purposes, he's the ruler. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps are made accountable to them so that the king may not suffer loss. Now, Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs. I was trying to make an American for a second there, of government affairs. But they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." Let's pause there for a moment. You see, Daniel is famous in his own time for being faithful to God. That is the thing for which he is known. He's earned that reputation quite well. From the very beginning of his service in the courts of the rulers of this empire that's changed hands a couple times, first Nebuchadnezzar's son, and now the Persians have taken over the administration of this great empire. Daniel has been known as the guy who listens to God of heaven, the one who not only does what he says, but even communicates with that God. You remember more than once, they wanted God's input on something, and the guy they called was Daniel. So now, the people who are trying to get Daniel out of this position of power, they don't want him to be their boss and the only person that they answer to. The scheme that's set against him has to involve his one weak point and his one strength, his God. Let's continue in verse 6. So the administrators and the satraps went as a group to the king and said, "O King Darius, live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or man during the next 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, O king, issue the decree, put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." So King Darius put the decree in writing. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened to Jerusalem, and he didn't pray for 30 days. No. What the Bible says instead is 3 times a day he got down on his hands and knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel And so they went to a king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or man except you, O king, would be thrown into the lion's den? The king answered, the decree stands, in accordance with the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who was one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the decree you put in writing, and still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel, and he made every effort until sundown to save him. The men went as a group to the king and said, Remember, O king, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict the king issues can be changed. So the king gave an order, and they brought Daniel and they threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. You know, there are multiple times throughout the Bible where people mock believers of God and say, May your God save you. On the cross, the Gentiles and some of the even so-called believers in God tell Jesus, if you're really the Son of God, come down off there, be rescued from what you're going through. But this is one of those times where Daniel's prayers for salvation got him into the mess, and they get him back out. And this sort of declaration of may your God save you is not issued in any sort of sarcasm or mocking tone, but in earnest. This king was trying to promote him to be second in command over the whole country. He doesn't want to get rid of him so quickly. This is a man he trusts, he relies on. He wants to be in a position where he can continue to do so. And so he says, may your God rescue you. Verse 17, a stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating, without any entertainment being brought to him. He could not sleep. First light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. And when he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? Daniel answered, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. And the king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. They don't put that in the VeggieTales version, I tell you. Then King Darius wrote to all the people, nations, and men of every language throughout the land, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. The story is famous. Children know it. People who don't know the Bible even know this story. They know about Daniel in the lion's den. And why not? Like his friends in chapter 3, Daniel was delivered from a death that was all but certain by the Lord. For us, the lesson is not about the lions. It's something much simpler. Daniel knew he was set up to fail. The one point of weakness, the thing that they chose to use to single him out, was his greatest strength, his reliance on the Lord. And his faithfulness to God was used against him in an effort to destroy him. But it was his faithfulness to God that rescued him in the end, because he did not waver. If the bait for the trap requires turning against God to escape it, it's better to take the bait. It's better to get caught by a trap than to get found out being unfaithful to God. Daniel's example here is a true example of faith. He continued to trust in God, to believe in him, even in the face of something that could have been avoided. All Daniel had to do was neglect his prayers. It's only a month. Some of us have neglected prayers for a month completely by accident. But Daniel continued to be faithful, even in the face of this great threat to his life. And in the end, God was glorified through his rescue. Not because Daniel himself did anything, but because of Daniel's example of his faith, God was elevated in the eyes of even people who did not believe in him. As Darius's own words say, he's the living God and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions, and he can save the church today from her enemies if the church will remain faithful to her God. I hope this lesson has been encouraging for you today, and one that we can apply to our lives as we consider our own role in doing God's will, trusting in him, and continuing to perform everything we know to be right faithfully before him. And ultimately knowing that our goal is to glorify God. If you haven't joined this church and participated in the glory that God has to offer us through that great relationship, we offer you to join us in baptism as we stand and sing.